Welcome from your nap, your long-awaited slumber has ripped you back into the noise of hell. Oh wait, it's planet Earth for ya. Hi, it's the 4th episode of XP for Heal. And it's been a taxing season for spring to come to an end. And yet, there's a promising summer just right up ahead. Frightful, but promising as well, in all regards as a living human being, and upon all the years to come. I hold the sounds of cicadas, peaceful and fearful, as they both hold the cycle of life, the very simple reminder, and the instant flashbacks for me each time I feel my eyes flutter close, to listen to it all more deeply, to listen to them, to have my eyes close. I rather not gaze upon the creature itself, to have the reality stir back inside of me. I already know by the time I hear the next set of chirps, the moment has passed. It pulls me into a darker thought. I am reminded summer will fade into winter, and all these heated up bugs will die and feed nature in some way, rather than continuing as I do, each passing breath I have, as I listen to them scream into the summer's night. Of course it's a downer, a negative in the ocean of misery for infinity to come, but I have to speak it, or I'll hold it too close to my heart for it to ever heal and clear the rot that throws itself upon my barrier. For all my magic and rituals I can recite and perform day to day, it comes at the cost of stamina. My very HP is taking hits I need to be aware of whenever we've given up so much of my mental ability towards protecting my peace, extending it out to others to recover by. I'm extraordinary, a survivalist, and smart in my own talents, though it needs a little more buffing by both the world around me to feel its worth. Though, in turn, I myself have the same ability to buff it up beyond any attack or ailment, and yet I'm cursed with a want to please. Still, it has a tattoo upon my flesh that fades and glows with the time skips of my life. It is a shadow I kick dirt at, but smile fondly at in the darkest nights when it alone is my guide to do better. I'm awakening from that soft, vulnerable place, full of potential, and into this thing that appears like glass shards in the air. The mere moment I breathe out my determination, I feel it enclose me in pressure and pain. But it excites my drive to move past it one day. For when I awake once more to the glass air, melted into rain, so warm in summer night, and the cicadas scream alongside me in my desires fulfilled. It is a lot to follow, to grasp at where my head even lies on the problem and solution tactics I'm employing in the day-to-day for that sweet summer night to come for me. I feel that glass evaporating around the most vital parts of me, but it still lingers as a threat and fear of the beyond. The discomfort stage, as some might remember how the movie Saw played its twisted mind games. And yes, they were twisted, but it did show getting out of a bad place by sacrificing the most, then making small attempts at doing better in their lives before meeting the cruel end in Saw. So rather than experiencing the full-blown horrors of a mutilated life, I can take that mental discomfort and push past it in ways that mend, cope, and explain that feeling than having my body traumatized for the sake of sheer willpower of getting out of a situation. And there you have it, giving you a deep, pondering, aching, cringy, and suffering moments at the start of the podcast. And I'd like to move that to a bit of me changing, me healing rather than me speaking on the darker things in my mind. I feel my style of helping myself, long term actually, instead of just covering the pain, fleeing the emotional work I need to do, that needs to be done to feel okay in my head and in my relationships, my networking, my day-to-day interactions. I used to have several drinks per week, and these would put me into a state of buzz rather than shit face. So at least my own upbringing, fears about blackout drinking kept me from falling into that abyss. But it did make its impact money-wise and in my health. It was very, very obvious the day after of drinking that I would be very puffy and slow, or just out of it when I would see my own reflection or how I move about the day. And even by the others around me, realized that so much of my weight could have been curbed by simply controlling the intake. And when I had changed that much, it literally made me lighter, and metaphorically lighter as well. And of course, I enjoyed how games and anime presented the cold adult beverage after a battle or lazy Sunday shenanigans, but I couldn't see its real-world impact that's beyond the screen, besides the character being seen as messy or buried by the bottles stacked up. But still, in most of those scenes, the character still held on reasonable conversations, fights, somber reflections during it that made it appear a freeing experience than a black hole you slowly sink into with each new pour you take in. It gave me an idea that alcohol could loosen you up to a reality that lets you become untouched by pain, but you could still see yourself and wonder the world and all the questions inside you without it dragging you down as well. And yet, we, me, I, everyone else, we live in a reality where drunk drivers, drunk killers, disgusting puke videos present the truth of what happens and the way to the permanent damage it brings to people's organs and the lives that are subsequently affected by said drinking. I clung to those soft, romantic versions of events that it would give you that messy feeling, but you would happy as well. Not the blackout shitting yourself in a half-piss bottle of beer. I still make it sound like I was drinking super heavily, like I needed AA or had been behind the wheel while intoxicated, but my own fear that had been established before I could drink made me drink within a confined place that had barbed wires to keep me in place, but still could hurt myself for only something I could see, and those that got to see my recycling canister each week. For all this occurred well after being legal to drink. I hadn't a big group of friends that wanted to drink or found the activity fun to go all night for, so I'm lucky peer pressure didn't corrupt me either. But still, the fact I put the drinks each week and then to once a month the drink made leaps in my health and where my money went. I can only say my drinking pool only started to shrink since I found out how to let out and go of the hurt that was pushing my heart so far down inside my soul. I had to go dry and make myself sweat. Sweat so much I felt myself becoming an anime power-up scene or the training montage that didn't come with a physical mentor, but felt my own self crying out. And I did my own research on how to be me at a happy point, which it got me better compared if I had a coach or a guide to follow, but since I was pretty sporadic on when I could make time to do it all and commit to becoming better, plus all while resisting the temptation to dull my brain by simple means, I put myself back into finishing an anime, a single series, just to understand the story as a way of giving myself a temptation, but one that wouldn't slip me, essentially, like a good temptation, a reward of something. And it would keep my focus, it would keep me engaged, it would keep me interested. And it would put me back on track in socializing without drinking, which is a good way to do it, so I could join a group of said fan watchers of the show. And, I mean, mostly I would hear them talk rather than engage, but still, another way to use my time outside of dulling. And it detoxed my body, which it's only going to go so far, because both in the fitness, socializing, and my own self-work, it's both at the same time that have to combine together to truly overcome it. Each day to day, I would get closer and closer to the day where my legs would finally shake and my head would feel itself crying in pity. But it just wouldn't jump that last hurdle to finish off the arc, the recovery, the finale. And so, we got into a little cycle of suffering. Rather than being hurt, I would sit in that mood. The discomfort phase had come into play again. And here I had to pull myself out, my soul's darkest corners, and get that meek, tired body to rage, just to get mad in any and all kinds of ways. Sure, I have to start with a gentle approach, cuddling that part in each step out of the dark, each step that would propel me forward. Every chance of praise and encouragement and prizes, like watching the anime, healthy coping stuff, to keep the darkness away, to make the interest in progressing more enticing. And we would start to go over the hurdle finally. But once we passed that hurdle, I had to drop it. I had to go into the discomfort once more. But with all that set up in the background of confidence, esteem, praise, ritualistic chanting of how great I am, how extraordinary I am, there is stability in this ground now, and warmth to reminisce on. And with my goal in sight, we could push onwards, towards, which I did, stumbling though, but then it got hard into the glass air once more. It didn't seek temptation. I seeked power then, and guidance to move and breathe. Which kind of goes into the fact of kind of investing in actual legit yoga, deep breathing, somatic training. Like being able to read your body does fucking wonders on just getting your shit together if that is the way of recovery for you. Like for me, never had I ever understood how much hot yoga with screaming death metal would enthrall me and make me desire life beyond, not beyond the grave, but beyond possibilities. In that time, experiencing both my body's own awareness, yoga, the heat, nature itself, putting my mind in a place that it didn't have time to wander in that hurt, in that discomfort, but rather in a state that was being productive. In that, I sent out a scream, a cry, and in that productivity was hard work to keep the momentum going, which left the day-to-day, my mind exhausted, but happy. The endorphins, the dopamine that would come from a fulfilling, tiring, good day. There was accomplishments of some kind, and it gave the goal closer to me, within grasping distance. But to grasp it, my own will would need to lay down all of the truths, let go of all the lies. Every time I was thinking to stay safe, the excuses to be lazy, the missed opportunities, the expectations, the recognition, the longing, the misunderstanding, being blinded. But now I simply could have a heart-to-heart conversation with me, my body, my mind, my soul, rather than the lies, the personas, the fronts, the terror, the fear, the bodyguards that my body had put up. After for so long, the glass air would keep me from breaching that part of me. And now, with my body and mind through essentially the ringer, the battle, I could begin healing. The pain that I could feel the glass air threatening for would melt. It would sweat out from my body, and the emotions would come forth as a wave, in and out as I would breathe, actually. Crying, screaming, and maybe even a slow, soft sound of vulnerability would come out as well. All the while, the summer night would arrive, and my desires would be fulfilled finally. And here, the calm storm you can watch from far away. Or if you've played Breath of the Wild, it could be the epic thunderstorm you chaotically decided to run around in without the fear of being struck down, given if you've acquired the fishy rubber suit or the adorned headdress that you've claimed from the desert. But in either case, watching from afar or running around in the dangerous weather, you can see the damage as a tourist, not affected by it. But you can see the fury upon the world around you, as this was from my distant mind. That's how I felt reading back this beginning segment. It's raw, it's strange, and it feels like an open poem to my heart, as my own healing wanes and waxes between hurt and pain and healing and crying and smiling. But I see its truth and understand its need to be heard rather than be shuddered off as a bad thought. It's simply a page in my mind that appeared in wondering, but it isn't me entirely. But I'll do my best to nurture this wandering path to a new route that spirals many new feelings and more wanderers to come forth from my mind. Just as the summer night shall come, my highs and lows will continue. I can't be at the middle. I'll just need to remember those high and low moments, and life will continue. The calm storm that I can both watch from afar and play around in with reckless abandonment. Which I do bring up Breath of the Wild, given Tears of the Kingdom is about to release, and I see a lot of people play the game both in frenzy panic to catch up, or you see the ones that lackadaisically play the game, collecting every piece of outfit, catching all the bugs, cooking all the meals, or laying by a fire, enjoying the ambiance as it changes from night to day. It's a game that gives you violence, fear, exploration, wonder, puzzling challenges, different mechanics that can be done in goofy ways like exploding fish, or direct, straightforward approach if you jump off the Great Plateau and go straight to Ganon, if you're bold and reckless, daring, the hero, the chosen one, or simply don't have the time to wander. You want to save the day right then and there. And just as they like to talk about in the trailers, the game gives you so much time in reality to defeat the main quest goal. Or, as such, 2 years have passed since its release, or 2+ years, because it is 2013 now. But it's one of those games that lets you do as you want. It's Animal Crossing in a way, but you can take the challenge or not take the challenge in any way, form you want. You can simply accept the new world and explore it, help the people you want to help, travel the distance of freezing cold to blazing hot. You can build a home for yourself. You can gather the materials to learn how to cook an excellent, powerful meal. You can acquire a best friend in a horse. You can meet dogs and find little treasures along the way. You can be a little devious and pull the many different monsters and mechanical monstrosities into glitchy moments. So both you can play it as you, or you can play it as Link. A different adventure either way. I like to wonder how this new game's going to up the ante or take away some of the creative ideas of how you would get one place to another. Because for one, I personally was hoping for a more underwater sense, or maybe going inside of a volcano, literally. Because, I mean, we did get to battle near the volcano, but still we didn't get to swim in it, or something a little bit more crazy to see. Though I do like the in the sky, in the air aspect, but how much of that is going to keep my appeal? Because again, I've not watched a lot of trailers for the new game, so I'm really lost on what the heck the plot's even supposed to be. Plus, I'm literally just saved the game at the footsteps of defeating Ganon, so I mean, I've been busy taking up the side quest, though I've not reached the max amount of hours for the hero's journey. I should definitely make a video showing my epic quest, the amount of times I've circled around and dropped. But that's going to be a big thing that comes up in a few days, which I should hold off on finishing this podcast so I can tell you my feelings, my reactions, and if I feel they still let you be creative, but have a plot in mind and a battle system that engages, but maybe tricks you, maybe gives you something to have to think outside the box, or if you level up Link, you could just brute force it. There's a few areas that I have just put the Master Sword on and the Barbarian costume and just barreled my way through, or done the lovely glitch where you just keep calling your horse and just run through the field. It's not super fast, but still, if you don't want your stamina to drain, it's still a helpful little tip. Oh yeah, my horse in the game is named Topanga. Why? I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Boy Meets World, but still, Topanga and Topeka, those T-letter names just stuck with me for so long, and I enjoy them. Yes, that's a little off, but oh well, those are names I prefer. That's what my horse's name that finally survived, because it's kind of difficult getting some of the horses to a reasonable distance to those stables. But once Tears of the Kingdom comes out, we'll find out if we're having horses again, or maybe another companion. I would assume we would have some ability to have a bird, but chickens still work, right? And as of yesterday, I finally decided, after 4 years of playing Breath of the Wild that I took it up the mantle, the challenge, the actual literal main plot to beat Calamity Ganon and enter into the castle's sanctum. And it was a 30-40 minute battle. It did take an excessive amount of time because I couldn't figure out how to parry the perfect block. But other than that, it was a fun fight that went down the line of different puzzles, different ways you challenge. And here we move beyond just the shenanigans of games and the wonder and the speculation for a new quest, a new story to unfold, and new challenges to accomplish, and the little success that you get when you discover something on your own. But as I talked about in the end of our last episode, the different anime, the different manga, the different media that has put to light different trauma, different social issues, commentary, and even how it's developed a certain view or stereotype on situations, such as magical girls. Though magical girls in different specs have dealt with different problems, though in more recent years they've become much more twisted, much more dark to the broad audience who have stumbled upon them. But I think I'd like to start with a random one, Shugachara, which is not entirely magical good girl, because it's still coming of age, high school, well, middle school, high school era magic, but it's even finding yourself as well. Because yes, the characters, a plethora of them, have magical abilities, though at the heart of the story, it's literally throwing in the characters' faces their would-be selves, their possible selves, all these gifts and talents and different aspects of their being formed into one single being. And with Amu, this pink-haired, adorably looking, apparently tomboy punk-esque looking character, who is presented as the tough girl, who's actually a shy, overthinking, stuttering, sweet girl. And the story presents it with suddenly 3 different of her would-be selves presenting: a cooking, sweet, kind-hearted self, a tomboyish, artistic one, and a peppy, cheerful, cheerleading, athletic type, all with their different colors bands, green, blue, and pink. Which is funny because since Amu's already pink hair, though this is just the start of the series where they're introducing many different characters and their different personas, their different sides to them, and the complexities of both them figuring out who even the world they are, as most of the cast is young, not even high school age, and they have parent problems, or they have simple desires to be happy in their own skin, or make friends, or work with being the eldest child while dealing with a younger sibling, parental roles being pushed upon them, or ideas about their future being expected already. Because then when we get way later into the manga and the anime, different complicated and maybe with the times issues, because again, the big romantic triangle in the series presents Oji-san, the princely middle school blonde-haired child who is Amu's first crush, and then presenting Iku, the cat boy who's like 4 or 3 years older than her, which has always brought up more concerns. Though again, it depends on where you stand on that and how you feel about it. Still, the whole thing, especially with the series, with a lock and key methodology being talked about, which in the series itself, it does describe how people try to unlock this lock of hers with a key, and yet in the end, she herself does this and unlocks a new form or power. But then with the power does come the dress that she wears, a literal wedding dress. But it could be a matter of them playing it off as her becoming a woman, her graduating from childhood to adulthood, could be her having a mature self of her image, it could be the next stage in life, because again, we have to realize this story has been around for a while, so the idea behind it, unless the author explains it, it may just be an adorably cute way to represent it. Because I mean, there's an entire anime manga series called Wedding Peach, where literally the magical girls dress in wedding dresses, and they do all have romantic interest in that series, but they are a bit older, so just kind of depends on what the author's thinking, because lo and behold, more and more in the recent years have there been the shocking discovery of a few manga artists being either in possession or in writing stories that tango into the sense of pedophilia, so you gotta wonder. But still, SelphyClark did make it over to the rest of the world. People really loved it. I really enjoyed it. I found, especially for the very fact of the main character dealing with these different personas of her personality. And yes, like most people in that mindset of young, adorable, sweet, romantic, hopeless romantic kind of girl falling for a guy who's a little bit older. Because, I mean, the era of boy bands, the era of movies projecting a romantic lead who's much older. Because again, it's a thing that's been perpetuated and even pushed upon us, even though in reality it gets shamed and banned a lot, but then when we have it in media, it's like sensationalized, because like Twilight, that's one. Because in actuality, even though Edward looks like a quote-unquote 17-year-old, he's an old man. just the reality. But from that, I do appreciate the series' take on some doubt that happens. The whole imposter syndrome that occurs during the series. And of course, SelphyClark has its own faults, because in the end, they do a lot of placing a hat of like girl stereotype, magical girl who sends love and non-violence and peace, while they have the male characters very brute force, physical violence, or not loving. So again, it's not perfect. It has its own faults for falling into pitfalls, though it does make the main character Amu a little pedestal of what a magical girl should be. A hero for all who doesn't hurt but rather heals to save the day. So it gets that point. And of course, there's always going to be a controversy, because this story came out in 2015 and it finished at 2010. So what was approved, what was acceptable, and what was not canceled or judged upon could still have been aired in the series. And I mean, then you go look at the rest of Peach Pit's work, such as Zombie Loan, Deers, Rosen Maiden. I do know there was an encore that got made for Sugachara, but I don't know how well that did. Unless it's still ongoing. Who knows? I know there's 2 other series I'm forgetting, but it's lost in my brain. And I mean, that's the biggest thing that's ever talked about in the series. Their use of stereotypes for gender identity in the end, and the age gap. Other than that, the story itself with the outside characters get appreciation. I mean, I know there's a character in it who cross-dresses, and no one's outrightly talked about that I could find any article or anything. They seem to enjoy it. But you never know. Maybe it's just like, hey, self-expression, they were cool with it. And I mean, I guess I'd never really looked at it as anything beyond just someone enjoying changing their look. Like, I think it's just I grew up with so much of the gender-bent anime and manga that it just seems second nature to be able to just put on a suit, cut your hair, and just be like, yeah, this is how I look now. Like, that's literally how I've viewed it, where you should be able to just be able to swap between if you like. And even kind of it makes me envious. I'm like, damn. Especially for cosplayers, being able to make themselves very masculine or change themselves to look very feminine. It's crazy how much you can change with just certain cut of clothes or makeup or even how you hold your body. It's impressive, really. Nah, I don't think is there anything else I want to talk about Sugachara. I mean, that's the big basis of it. Because, I mean, in the end, the series does present you with the characters understanding themselves more, having a clearer picture of what kind of person they want to be, and they're much less doubtful, a little less imposter syndrome, and they understand they are a multifaceted person with different parts of themselves. Sure, they might lean more into a certain personality type, but still, they don't have to just be one dimension. They can be a 3-dimensional person if they like. That's the biggest pull from it, yeah! So going from the cutesy, kawaii, pink-haired, adventuring, magical world of Peach Pit Sugachara into Zombie Loan, which Zombie Loan came out around 2002 or 2001. No, 2002. And it finished 2011. So it had a good, nearly, 9, 8, around that, nearly a decade of time to be out. And it did get an anime, but mainly we're covering the manga because the anime didn't cover the complete series. Because given there was extra discs released on DVD rather than aired, so not everyone got to see what I'm trying to explain. Because from Peach Pit's story of self-identity, childhood, becoming a young adolescent, romance, different personas and your possible futures, to literally a story about death. Literally death. I mean, it's called Zombie Loan. Loaning out life by becoming a zombie. But this is where you still are a sexy, bishonen, kawaii girl and guy. Because, I mean, very first and foremost, based around trauma itself, the main character here, Michiru Kita, literally can see when someone's about to die, and the slow progression towards that final death. So already, being death anxiety, being desensitized to death, becoming empty or hollow to the sense of time, and even just always wondering who's next, which the story starts off with this information being provided, and her herself starting to notice she's marked for death, which is quite panicked for someone who's now lived about, say, maybe 15, 16 years old of always having this Shimigami eyes and realizing people around her are always going to die. And she doesn't have to have that unknown wonder, and now she has confirmed evidence that she's seen over time. But besides that part of the story where that's a huge chunk of where her perspective of life, fate, living, not living, and even nothing would be described as sudden surprise or chance. If someone was going to be, say, hit by a car, she would already see the death mark for them before they left her sight. But sure, it requires her to see them, so it's not an all-knowing ability. But that's a big point of this series, because even the manga itself is stylized in black, gray, and white, so a lot of dark coloring compared to Shugochara's pink, blue, green, yellow, sparkles, colors. But again, it shows a transition of where the story's theme, what niche group is reading it, and even aging up into a different time. So rather than a youthful childhood story to now kind of getting into that edgy teen year, not quite an adult, so still YA, young adult, yeah, it can go in that. And I mean, it came out, I know, through Yen Press, so I'm pretty sure you're still able to find it, because it's good. Because then, when you get to the ending, oh my god! Like, just understand, I have to talk about this ending, because, cue the spoilers. You obviously get a romantic triangle in the story, but it's between the two brothers in the story who try to help our main character, Michuri, with her sudden impending death. And lo and behold, the title drop. She can become an agent of this zombie loan business in order to keep her life, keep on living, as the two brothers in the series have done as well. Shito and Chikari. Yes. And of course, they have the silver-haired guy who's the rough and tough, almost like Kyo-Soma, brawling, very brash. And then they have Shito, the calm, collected, more business, and a little reserved. But they still have both their great points in the series. I do know a lot of the fandom was pushing for Chikari just because they're like, ooh, he is emotionally constipated. Just us with our trauma being like, yes, I want to fix him. Like, no, don't do that, please. But even, like, if you read the story, it gets so freaking elaborate, from just the day-to-day of, hey, we just want to live and go about their business, and then freaking running off to China to save someone, like their parents and stuff, and then suddenly trying to revive their great leader, summoning them and be like, I thwarted your plans, to freaking, what is it, the Akashi Records? Like the condominium of the universe's events. Like, it gets a little over the top, but still, it makes sense in the world of Zombie Loan. Me just telling you like this, it sounds off the wall. But then, the very fact of the matter is, in the end of the story,
they entirely just delete the timeline that they're in. So they don't have to have zombie loan. They never had to thwart plans. Our main character, Michuri, doesn't have to die. Everyone's safe and sound. But apparently our main character in the end remembers everything. But no one else does. So she's just like, I'll keep these memories with me, and hopefully when everyone is close to death, they'll remember me for a moment. And then suddenly, events from the other timeline start right back up. Like, fate itself can't be changed. And the story literally ends with, oh, here we go again. Like, are you serious? We're just scrapping all this effort, all 13 volumes that just happened to thwart these plans, and just be like, to be continued, ×2. Like, what? Even though I am a person who loves when a story decides to twist it and be like, gotcha, but still, it's those mind fuckeries of stories that you're like, so nothing we did mattered. Because it's the whole, the human race is such a small, minuscule thing in the grand scheme of things. Like, there was nothing to change fate, and now, which could be interesting because the very fact that the main character has all this information ahead of time this time around could be interesting to see. Because literally, it's an isekai without transporting to a new place. They're just her just being in a parallel universe where she already knows what's gonna happen. So I haven't heard if they were going to talk more about the series, because that sounds actually interesting. Where the story has already occurred, all this struggle, and now they have to just do it all over again. I mean, it's like, what is it? Moi Love. Like, for the ultimate, the second part of the story. I mean, now when I think about it that way, it actually could be fun. Or it's just doomed to repeat itself, and it's a nihilistic, oh, it's just the life cycle. It will never end now. It could be like a punishment since they did mess with those forbidden records. Where to even jump off from mindfuckery, time-twisting, parallel universe restart mangas and series? Because, I mean, Shugachar and Zombie Loan happened well over 10, 15 years ago. Because, I mean, Fruits Basket, that's something that's more recently come about. And definitely touched upon a lot of people's interpersonal, family, trauma, tragedy issues that were being brought to light, because especially with COVID, people being forced home, forced to communicate with family or people that they didn't want to interact with or knew that they were being re-traumatized, re-triggered, and all the bad feelings. Because, I mean, first and foremost, Fruits Basket still happened a while ago for the manga and the first part of the anime, where you literally met several different characters that were either forced, orphaned, or removed themselves willingly from bad situations, or lost family, or were cut out entirely, like if we talk about Momiji's story, yes. How do we even go about this? I mean, I guess maybe just go by character, because everyone's situation sucks in a different fashion. Because, I mean, you start for Toru. Her mother died. Her father died. Her father's family acts like she's lower than life. She doesn't have family from her mother's side. She's truly a found family type character, which I think that's the biggest pool of the story, that she has friendships that are lasting for a lifetime, that they give a shit about her well-being, and they still mess up. Because again, everyone has their own problems and they don't want to impose upon people. And then the very fact of she stumbles upon the Soma family and they impose on her in a good way, that they pull her out of this people-pleasing niceness and make her see her own personality beyond just smiling face and keeping the peace. It's beautiful. I mean, for the very fact Toru being a female protagonist, a sweet protagonist, and a protagonist that doesn't actually have a love triangle, that was refreshing. It was friendships and family relationships building, breaking, and even letting go. Because not everyone gets a reuniting closure ceremony with all their family members. Because then, from Toru to Kyo himself gets to just cut his dad out. That he's just like, I'm not taking your guilt trips, your gaslighting, your hate anymore. That he's above it, that he can feel like a man and not feel like such a weak child against him. Because then the very fact of then his own mother gave up after giving birth to him. And yes, it does sound messed up to say gave up, because how the story talks about her passing really tries to put the full pain and pressure and the anxiety and the life hopelessness onto her giving birth to Kyo, the cat spirit form. But I mean, we don't know what else was truly happening in her life. That's the other problem. We're just given child guilt. Because maybe she had postpartum. She may have come from a different cultural upbringing that didn't appreciate that. She could have lived somewhere without support. And even how the father of Kyo talks, when we do get to see him, we don't see a very kind-hearted person. But again, having a loved one unalive themselves and leave could change that person. So again, it's a big point where we don't know the full medical support system that Kyo's mother had. We're just given she unexisted herself because she gave birth to Kyo. Which is a really messed up thing for a kid to have that kind of information for that specific only reason, when there had to be more. It couldn't just be that. But again, not everyone's death is explained. That is the messed up part. Even if someone leaves a note, tries to explain themselves, it's never fully answered, because now you can't talk to that person anymore. And now you're riddled with this guilt and not able to let go of some possibilities, speculations, wondering, and those late night thoughts that creep in to question your entire being. And then the whole fact of the Soma family consistently, generationally put the cat in such a low totem, disrespectful, trash level, even though it's another spirit of the world, the gods, the flow of light. Like, it's just frustrating. Just to say, how far can I spiral into this when Kyo needed a good social worker, a caseworker, mental health, but like, he was able to have a great father figure through karate, through martial arts, through actually not living in regular day society and having his mind and body challenged to become stronger. But the problem was, he was still being isolated from other factors of just being able to hang out with people. Because then in the series, they definitely express that Kyo's able to bring people around comfortably, and they're able to hang out and just joke about. That's the other crazy part, because in the series itself, from Toro's perspective, she's able to see that Kyo has such good qualities. He's a little rough and tough and a little blunt, but he makes fast friends. He's honest, and you don't feel far away from him. You understand what's happening, which is crazy, because then Kyo has his dark secrets that he kept within himself for so long. It's wild, the level of complexity these characters have, each of them, with their persona of keeping quiet about what's hurting them from the inside. Every single one of these characters. My God. Like, just even all the notes I've taken for just this series. I mean, besides just the romantic aspect of the story, high school, becoming an adult. I mean, the biggest part of the story being family, as I just talked about. Kyo's father, his blame, his guilt, his absolute cut off from his life, his mother ending her existence after giving birth to him, Momiju's mother absolutely cutting herself entirely out of his life, making her memories disappear, him never getting to meet his little sister. They don't really ever show Shigure's parents, but I would assume they kind of were just let him do as he pleased because he was able to be a professional, and even since he was so close in the ranks of the Soma family. They did show quite a bit of, Yuki's parents being two-sided, of both him expected to be the perfect child, and yet never wanted to, care and love for him like normal parents. And then you have Ayame being their oldest son, and he became student council president. He was very successful in school, very popular, but very over the top at times. But still, it's such a personality shift of both. Obviously, even for Ayame's life, having his younger brother be the more revered one, given that he was the spirit of the rat compared to the spirit of the snake. And it is a frustrating part, given that their brother dynamic then has the older brother was just kind of left to do what he wanted, and he really flourished in himself. But then seeing how his brother was then just almost captured like a bird in a cage and locked away. And sadly, as the story progressed, you do learn about how he just ignored him. He moved about his life and regrets that he could have intervened more in order to help him. And now he's doing as he does. He's over the top and trying to reconnect with his brother. And sadly, a lot of time and a lot of resentment has happened. So there's a giant gap that has to be filled. Which, in this series, in due time, they do come to see each other as reliable brothers. And yeah, their personalities are going to clash, but still, that they can see eye to eye is just a lovely moment that happens towards the end of the story when they have those class teacher-student conversations about their life, where they're going, and his brother steps in with his lavish style. And it's nice because he kind of curb stomps his parents with his words. And kind of life goes on with Yuki having a newfound respect in him. And I mean, it's a part of where Ayame has to understand he can't just do this out of just guilt. He needs to just want to connect with his brother, not because guilt is there. And he finally moves past just having guilt into just wanting to care about his brother. Like, that's a huge part. I'm surprised there's not a huge amount of actual siblings in the story. I mean, there's a huge family dynamic, but not a lot of actual brother, sister, or older, younger children involved. Because then we have the bullying. We have the bullying. Oh, this is the part that's just so irks and saddened because you see it in so many different flavors of types of bullying that happens. And here, I actually pull out all of my collection of the manga for Fruits Basket because there's so many different, as I've said, flavors of bullying. Because quite literally, there's the bullying that happens when Toru is a young child, where they make the mention of the fruit basket and that she's never called upon, that she's targeted. Obviously, it could be just children picking on people, or they're trying to get a rise out of her because already at that point she was a people pleaser as well. But then, probably in the society and the culture she lived in, being with a single mom, other kids didn't really comprehend or connect the dots or have the context to understand that. And even the very fact of too many young little children think being mean to someone they like is a good thing, which it's not. It's very destructive and unhealthy. The very fact of at the end of manga 1, her family from her father's side bullied her with the assumptions and presumptions and the passive aggressiveness of their assumption of her doing nefarious, bad, or illegal things in the household when they already knew she is an underage high school student who had to go live somewhere while the repairs were being done. The very fact they didn't try to help her set up a housing situation, it just boggles me how the family is so shitty, just to say it. And then the sweet grandpa, in his old age, realizes all the regret and all the forgotten years that he had with his son, and that he could be so pleasant with his granddaughter. Because other than that, yeah, right out the door, when Toru's being introduced and starting her day, and you get a little tidbit of mystery and romance at the start of the story, you're then smack dab with super aggressive girls demanding any information that she can have, and somehow making it seem like Toru's the problem, even though these other people are heckling her, and not being curious, but generally feeling like they're almost have a knife to her neck in a way. But thankfully she has such good friends who instantly back her up. Which is, it's wild to think how much Fruits Basket could have been dark. Like, darker than it's ever presented. Because for the very fact of, they could have presented Fruits Basket with Toru quite literally homeless, without even a tent, or even couch hopping. They could have presented it with her in prostitute situations. They could have presented where her friends were actually her bullies. It's kind of crazy thinking about little tiny changes to the story would have made it 18 plus, would have made it so dark and demented of a story. But then it could have become a sweet slice of life. But I'm so happy it is that aesthetic of anime, of romance, but still growing up at the same time. I'm just having these realizations of, if her friends were never there at the start of the story, you would have to really wonder how truly alone Toru would have become. Because yes, she still does hide a lot of her problems and her concerns behind a sweet smile, but still being able to socialize and have people who care for her and have been with her through tough times, she's at least able to maybe slightly let herself go or relax in a way. I don't know, it's just crazy to think how tidbits of bullying that have occurred. And yes, for the most part, when you look back at the story, she's lets all the hurt, the mean words just kind of flutter off. But once you get further down into the story, when you see the bullying that happens with Risa, the spirit with the tiger, you especially see how much she clings to her. And then when you see Toro's reaction to the bullying, the abuse that Akira... Wait, why am I trying to say Akira? Akito. But yes, the bullying, abuse that happens with
Kisa.
and with Rin as well. Like, the more in your face, much more the violent, the abusive side of it definitely awakens Toru's protective side that pushes her out of people-pleasing and makes her want to help and just to love these people, and not just for one simple reason. She's bonded with them as family. Maybe it's... Besides it being a cutesy start to the manga, the very fact that in the background there is hurt and pain, and a lot of it being shielded away, maybe that really resonated with me when I first picked this up. I'm like thinking of how long ago this came out, because I actually got copies from Tokyo Pop when it first got published. Because let's see, printing and publication. Let's roll about, because I even have my name written inside the cover, so it's that long ago. Yeah, 1998. And this first published in 1999 in Japan. Man, because the English text copyright came out 2004 through Tokyo Pop, printing in February of 2004. Because, I mean, I don't want to go too further down into the story about some of the horrific drama that happens, because it does pull into a lot of different story points that happen. So I'm only presenting that much information at the start. And even, I can't talk about Fruits Basket for 2 hours. There's other topics at hand, as much as this is near and dear in my heart.
Besides the drama, the bullying, the internal conflicts that Fruits Basket presents ongoing. I mean, sure, we could talk about the second half of the story technically, but not everyone has entered into the sequel of the story with the children, because for one, it does take away part of the story that was a center focus. Completely off topic, but on topic. Spy Family. I mean, in one way, you can absolutely look at the series as just miscommunication as a clusterfuck. Oh my god. That is the biggest point. I mean, besides the impending war, pretending, stress, extra work, being overworked, killing. I don't even know where to list off, because literally I'm still at the beginning of the series, but the very fact of there's two different camps when you look at who's watching the show and what they're analyzing from it. For some, they see a sweet family are magically getting built together because somehow they work with each other, this oddball mess of intrigue and spy network panning out for itself. And on the other side, this tension-filled cat and mouse game where every day you're vying for survival, that you're living in the present moment rather than having a future to think about. I mean, I don't want to go too far into it because I don't want to be spoiled if someone talks about it, because I just watched back-to-back 3 episodes, and one part of me was just absolutely gaga, enjoying the colors, the sound, the hilarity of the situation where each of them are playing their own part and trying to navigate between each other without hinting at their true emotions and tensions. And yet, they still have these moments where they bond with each other because of the persona they're playing, or that they feel like they're seeing through to their true side, or even just the very fact of they get to be normal in this family somehow, even though they're all playing, they're all receiving a sense of peace with each other as well. I'll dig that a bit more because, again, I've only just started the series finally, and a spoiler, I didn't even understand that Anya was supposed to be a telepath. Like, for all the parodies, for all the snippets, anything that I've heard about the series, somehow I missed that part. I thought the story was literally Lloyd getting married to someone who was in his spy network, like someone he kind of knew but didn't know at the same time. And I figured Anya was being adopted so she could become trained in a spy academy. Not this war stuff that was going on, or that Anya can somehow read everyone's head. And obviously her being able to hear everyone is overbearing. At least they make that a actual problem, that she can't filter out the noises unless she really focuses. Which is kind of crazy that she loves spy stuff, and yet she's not being trained to become a spy, but technically she is on the side. But again, the plot, I was not anticipating that was actual truth. I thought that was just an AU that everyone really liked and thought was funny for her character. So I was really confused at the start of this series that she was hearing him. I thought just the narration was just getting spot on, like she knew how to read people or body language, not that she can literally hear their thoughts, because then the very fact of the world they exist in somehow was able to experiment with people either multidimensional or biologically enough to cause their brain to either have certain abilities, or that they've now arose to a new level of heightened intelligence. Because again, you can't assume Anya's dumb, as much as the characters did bring it up in the first episode, but she's only 6. Well, yeah, that she is 6, and another point to realize that she may actually be malnourished, because in the very first episode, he did mention that she looked small, that she didn't look 6 years old, which is another concern for the fact of the orphanage massively not being taken care of, abuse happening, or the fact that she was on the run, doing what she had to do, and somehow ended up in the orphanage, even though she can read people's mind. But again, she's only 6, so it's not like she can do a lot for herself without
potentially running into a bad person. So, I mean, orphanage, yes, horrible, but she can at least anticipate what is happening rather than living with a Russian roulette, essentially. Which, kind of crazy that even in her new life, she's fighting to survive every day for the very fact that she doesn't want to get taken away. And she's even scared that these two other adults who are well trained and capable would hurt her for her ability, though no one else has brought up the fact about telepaths. Like, I don't know if it's supposed to be a secret project or even assassins and spies don't know about it yet. I mean, since she is 6, and we're assuming she was doing this training when she was 4 or 3 years old, because again, she was talking in the episode. I mean, she could be 2, because I mean, again, 1 or 2-year-olds do have capacity to talk, but depending on what else they did to her mind or body, we don't know concrete information. Maybe in the manga there's more. And again, I'm rambling. I need a part this way to talk about it in a trauma or healing way, because for one, personally, it's very healing and relaxing to see a found family trope coming together, and still you don't feel like you see the impending end to the relationship. You just see them bonding, like these little building blocks that reach a point where even with the established lies, the fake personas, their real personalities are still coming out and bonding with each other. And that would make it complicated once this mission ends. Because especially Lloyd's character has already been presented with many firsts. Passing out, exhaustion, falling asleep, being surprised. And he's baffled by this at the moment. It seems even in his training, he hasn't understood these feelings of actual intimacy, a close familial connection, or even being able to bond with someone or nurture and mentor them, or to have romantic love. Because we only got to see a snippet of his romance, which was very dry and pale. But I mean, it was for a mission itself. There was no him in it. Because again, the series does start with him talking about his identity, that he sees himself as a man in black, no identity, and that he does what he does in the dark of the night. But he still is human after all. And yes, these moments do feel a little quick, but again, there's a lot going on in every scene, so I don't want it to dwell on this contemplation until further down, when he has an insurmountable pile of thoughts to think on or has to contemplate, rather than these small tidbits that have happened at the start. Because again, over time, especially if the series finished or not, which I'll need to find out, if anyone else gets hurt later down the line, what would Lloyd actually do? Would he risk a mission for the sake of another? Yeah, besides me just starting Spy Family and having the realization that there's a lot of different ways the story could go. It could entirely water down or even just skip over the complications, even though in the background there's a lot of very heavy things going on, for the very fact of deceit and war, and the spy organization is pretty important on keeping these two places in peacetime and there's tension. And the fact that in the background there is experimentation with mental states of children. We don't even know who else has been a part of that experimentation as well. Oh, okay. Besides the implications there, and my newfound hyperfixation on that, I mean, of course we can put a snippet of One Piece in here about trauma, because besides the show itself causing debilitating, hyperventilating sadness at times, because it brings to light just the most basic human bonding connections, and either the betrayal or the fracturing or the renewal or even just re-establishing you can have hope in this world. Because I just went through the Amazon Lily arc with Luffy after they went through trying to get a bubble placed over their ship. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's around the 400 episodes. And pretty much, Luffy showing his personality, his goodness of heart, and adventure seeking, he was able to appeal to Boa Hancock, the pirate empress, and just showing her not all men are shit. Like, to put it very blankly, she just got to see someone who's generally a good person who wants to help. And of course, I don't know where they're going with this lovesick idea they have for her, if it's going to truly debilitate her, or if it's just a way to show her cutesy rather than her empress self. Because, I mean, I was kind of liking her Hime Dare... What is it? There's a trope, Hime Dare? Because I know there's acting royal but actually being super lovey. But she's not quite that, because this lovesickness thing is making her kind of goofy, because she doesn't even care if she does these ridiculous catchphrases that don't sound like a empress. I don't know. I'll figure it out as I progress through more episodes, because yes, it gets some giggles out of me, but then with what disconnect information I have for her later down the line, I don't know what's happening in between these different arcs. But yeah, besides Boa being able to see a generally good-hearted person who doesn't care where she's come from and treats her as everybody else, it definitely opened up her eyes, and it made several of the other Amazons respect him and see a new side to people. I mean, of course, with the Straw Hats themselves and freaking Mary, I did not realize just the emotional connection that was being built with this ship. Not even a talking character, but the very fact the boat is vital to this adventure being pirates on the sea. And you could just, it's sentimental. It's like your first home, your childhood home being destroyed. It messes with you because the whole idea of the place, having the physical manifestation there and having it now gone, it now only lives in your memories. It just messed with me so much, ending Water 9. Wait, Water 9, Water 7? I can't remember these numbers. Anyways, the whole arc, and going to Enos Lobby, and then being like, fuck the government! Having all these different things going on at once. And then even throwing in Robin's past, Frankie's past, freaking the challenges of your friends with Usopp and Luffy butting heads. And they were both in right and wrong. It's just, they gave me too many things to analyze for my brain. And putting the sad music in the background. Waterworks instantly for me, good gosh. Because especially, I was blubbering with even Brooke's room. Losing your mind, losing all your crew, being stranded at sea with really no way to truly live, because A, being a skeleton, and B, his shadow being gone for the longest time. It's hard because each of them have a different rank of sadness, trauma, endurance, struggle, or willpower, but they've all have gone through some bad shit, some horrible things, but they're able to overcome, move on, harness that energy, and even look to the future and what else they can do. Like, for the very fact, even Brooke, even though he's dead, he still sees a world to explore, to go back to. Luffy has... I don't know if Luffy has any... struggles with not seeing his family, or maybe he's just grown up with a lot of people that he doesn't see that loneliness. I mean, we've seen some times where he's in anguish over his teammates, his companions getting hurt. Because, I mean, we just saw that when they were fighting the Bartholomew dude. Yeah, with the little paw. And of course, maybe it's just something that's not at the forefront of his brain to think about because they've come so far with the challenges and power and strength they've acquired that it really takes a serious moment for that to come to light. But then again, I can't really talk a lot about One Piece's trauma and stuff because, again, there's a lot of spoilers because, as one of the biggest running jokes to the series is, it's so long, I'll never finish it. But I mean, bit by bit, more and more have been able to watch it and process it and enjoy it on their own pace. And I don't want to throw every spoiler out of the book because I don't want it thrown back at me. It's a fair trade. But to another series we could talk about, which is loved and hated, cringy and ridiculous, still kind of hard to attain given it's half stuck in Japanese, so not everyone's access to that, but still, School Days, Summer Days, a series that teaches you have to make decisions. You can't hesitate, and you certainly can't eat your cake and have it too. But even talking to your friends, and even said those friends actually having loyalty to you, or even what matters in life. Because again, the entire setting of School Days is in high school, in Japan, set early 2000s. It's not late 2000s because really they have flip phones still. They're pretty much talking in person mostly, or small conversations over the phone. No one's using social media in this series, which surprising. If they had social media, all the dirt would have came out very quickly because they all go to the relatively small area in Japan. No one's sneaking really excellently, okay? But anyways, School Days, which was a 12-episode anime. Forget how many volumes for the manga, but definitely anime and manga end very differently for each character and how they're portrayed in the end. Which, I mean, I gotta hand it that they decided to spin it two different ways. And then being a visual novel / ecchi visual novel, because again, depending on how you play the video game, the light novel type story, you either get to see the worst in people or a heartbreaking love triangle that you just can't break quite yet. Or even just, hey, let's do the worst decisions ever and see how they affect us 20 years from now. Of course, School Days, in parts, hasn't really aged. Well, Cross Days specifically is one that would be up for debate if it's aged well or if it's more of that edgelord content that was like, ooh, I'm being risky, but really it was just hating on certain characters for just hating on them instead of moving the plot in a more strategic way. But anyways, go back to the start. School Days. It starts with our main protagonist, average boy Makoto, with his little sister and his mother, and the father that may have actually bared a lot of other kids in the story, because if you look at the conspiracy theory stuff on School Days, it gets a little spicy. But besides the point, what we do know at the start, Makoto is in love, infatuated, in lust, or simply ogling a beautiful, raven-haired beauty who is very quiet, who goes on the same train as him every day. Kotonoha, who is portrayed as a reserved, quiet, sullen-looking face of a busty character, and it has a trope that goes into play at first of if you have a picture of said person on your phone, you might fall in love with them if you're able to keep it hidden for X amount of days. Though in this case, Makoto is very willy-nilly with his secret photos, and lands the eye of Sekai, another boisterous, loud, giddy, childish classmate of his who somehow already likes him even though they don't really actually interact, because most of the time before their initial meetup, she's hanging out with other people, chilling, doesn't really show an interest in having love or experiencing it in school. But anyways, they meet. She discovers the photo on his phone. He's obviously concerned that now he has no chance with Kotonoha. But Sekai actually decides to play wingman for him. Unbeknownst to us, she somehow is in like with Makoto, so she's thinking, hey, let me give them up to this other girl. Though in her action she does propel their relationship forward more compared to his crush, Kotonoha. Because obviously, reserved, quiet girl that needs more time and patience to develop a relationship compared to Sekai, who is very upfront and silly. And yet, she plays dirty and manipulative when she realizes she has an opening, an opportunity to swoop in. And rather than communicate this like, or even that she wants to pursue him, they decide to do this all willy-nilly behind each other's backs. And depending on if you're watching anime, manga, or playing the game, these choices come out to show shitty personality, indecisiveness, on and off, like, not like, lust, actual like. It gets messy, depending even if you involve other said girl characters in the series, or even their mothers. MILF alert. It's just a game where people don't actually communicate what they're thinking. They don't take a moment to step back and reflect. Because by the time they step back and reflect, personally, and actually realize what they're doing, it's pretty much too late for a happy ending. Someone has got hurt by said actions. Someone's become pregnant. Someone has already fiddled around and has gotten a taste of the cake. Or even bullying, abuse, SA. Things of that nature occur depending on your route or which story you're watching. Because if you watch through the anime, Makoto thinks he is a player. It is ridiculous. But I guess once you've had enough experience, you think you're the bag. But anyways, besides the main point of the series having these over-the-top soap opera level romance and danger to them, the game presents kids, teenagers, young adults who somehow have all this free time instead of classwork to do and friendships or just hobbies to worry about satiating lust. And surprising enough, they don't have enough consequences in reality that happen. They have outlandish consequences that happen, i.e. the death that can occur. There's only really 1 or 2 times they show a moment where it's like, oops, we got pregnant, and like, most of the time you don't show people using protection in the series. And even ever classic for the anime, they have the ambiguous, is she not pregnant? You never know, because by that point, people are unhinged. And they don't show any medical doctors involved, or even the school, like, council or principal getting involved, even though people are having massive rumors spread about them. But again, the series is targeted mainly to the young adult crowd. The parents and everyone else are pretty much back burner, like Charlie Brown, womp womp. You might see them here and there just for sprites, but it's pretty much their own conflict. Sure, once you go into Summer Days, you might see more of the parent characters, but they're there for romantic interest, basically, or to bring up some more drama in the background. But I mean, I get some people hate the series because they're like, my god, this romantic stuff is ridiculous, or one or the other can't just speak to what they're actually feeling, or they just keep going into bad habits over and over again. But it's a good example of bad people, good intentions, bad intentions getting mixed together. Not everyone's perfect, things happen, and even being indecisive leads to the worst of situations. The whole thing of being a hesitator in life has opportunity costs left and right being lost. By Makoto continuously hesitating on pursuing Sekai as a full-on girlfriend, he's just gaining the benefit of secret sex on the side, but he's losing out on people's idea of him. Both, they don't know what his intentions are, and then Kotonoha is having mental stress because she thought she had a boyfriend, but actually doesn't. She has a cheater. Or then the other half, Makoto hesitating on telling Kotonoha that he doesn't want to pursue her anymore because he doesn't want to be patient, he doesn't want to wait. And even he's an impatient boy. It shows that he doesn't really have hobbies outside of hanging out, doing classwork, and hanging out with his little sis. Like, he doesn't provide anything interesting to himself besides making bad choices.
Of course, School Days is not the most relevant visual novel anymore. It definitely had hype back when it first presented itself and when the anime ended, given its more spicy ending and for real life news that made airing the episode become delayed. So it held notoriety for that and the timing of real life events. But it's not the most edgy or dark. I mean, look at Berserk. That has a lot more going down in it compared to a slice of life psychological horror love triangle series like School Days. But I don't want to spoil it because, for one, I'm still working through Berserk, so I'm processing it. Let's see. I mean, in more recent news, of course, we have
Your Lion April? That I did not realize what I was entering into. Thinking, oh, music and the trauma and the struggle of being perfect at playing and performing this music for a audience based on a grade compared to expressing yourself on your own. But no. Your Lion April definitely flipped what I was expecting of a musical story and made it just very personable and deep, and just wondering what you want to even do with your life beyond just being a kid and having decisions to make, but grieving, recovering, and even being able to move on and being okay with your small infinity disappearing. That the light of hope now has to be carried on by yourself rather than the goal, the person, the object, the vision that was guiding you. Rather than having a mentor there beside you, having to figure out that you yourself have what it takes. You have the music in you. You have the desire. It's not just someone else telling you what to do. But you honestly and truly hold that dear to you, and you don't want it to disappear for the sake of remembering yourself and honoring those who've supported you. I've definitely binge watched Your Lion April, thinking like, oh, what a cute story, and there's little struggles and you want to see them progress, and then seeing all the side characters present their own passion for playing and wanting to challenge themselves how far they can take it. And then the very fact of the love that's happening in the story flipped once you got to the end with the confession note. Oh, that both twisted and revealed a lot more information, which helped add the layers to it. Which even, it was a good way to cast off or set off the story to have future hope rather than just the present day. How else to explain it? Because when I watched it, I really was in a sad point. And being able to just tear up and flow with it and enjoy someone else's passion for music, both rediscovering it and understanding what they bring to the table rather than what was taught to them. Beyond just practicing the notes and the keys that excel your point score, but what gives you a flair to it. Like having those kind of series where you get to see an insight and you're seeing all these different characters with their own struggles, but they all want to support this main person who's gone through their own personal hell. And then having the light of hope come in and disappear at the same time, so quickly as spring to summer fades into each other. I really would like to find another series like that is in more recent day. Because I have two other series that make similar feelings, like Full Moon and Kaleidoscope. I forget if that's the full title, but those two other series have that kind of light of hope, and that you have to take it into your own grasp now and move on and maybe have fond memories of a life that was once there, but it's not possible to have that person in that realm anymore, but you can fondly think of them. Because, I mean, a huge part of grieving, a huge part of finding yourself from aging out of childhood to aging into adulthood having your own hopes and dreams and passions. And that support unit that you've been awakened to is now gone. But at this point, you yourself are your own support system as well. Yes, you have your friends in the background, but you yourself are now a pillar of strength and love and hope, and you can remember them helping you. We could talk about the sweet, the cute stuff, the more dramatic and soap opera, but even one that presents a real world struggle, tragedy, war crime was Grave of the Fireflies. Here, me and my friend, young in age and impressionable by the Ghibli studio videos of Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, Ponyo, and then stumbling upon this one. This that we were not prepared for, because for one, we saw pretty art, we saw Hayao Miyazaki's name on it, and we began the movie. With it starting off with parentified children, an older brother and his younger sister living in Japan, right when the world wars were going down. Yeah. So suddenly, without their parents, moved into another relative family, and then suddenly them, I forget if they were kicked out or if they left as well, but pretty much at that point, starting off the main point of the story, they were homeless during war times. And they definitely showed some of the horrors that occurred. Because for the very fact of Grave of the Fireflies, spoiler-wise, starvation. The real and true horror of just people who get left behind, who don't have support units or ways to get access to the basic needs when war is breaking out. And even when they don't have the means of getting around or even the information needed to survive. Because then in the story itself, the older brother's stealing when raids are going down, and he's thanking the enemies for this, that he's able to provide basic necessities because horrible stuff's going on. But yet, in the story itself, it does show the starvation of the younger sister, and that she perishes to this. That without consistent, stable food and water, by the time this summer is ending, she's no longer there. And all his efforts of pillaging and running around stealing come to an end. And there the story lies with him himself, begging and dying at his feet, a beggar with no one showing any kind of compassion to him or understanding the horrors he's dealt with. And the story ends on that, literally, the Grave of the Fireflies. A very short-lived, struggle-filled life with these two children being victims of this entire situation. Even though the story, in my naive head, was thinking that they would find a means of living, they would escape the situation. But no, the reality is how many actual young kids, young adults, older adults, fell prey to this kind of situation with their support units being taken away because of the military, taken away because they got killed, taken away because they couldn't get back to them. The raids, the lack of food, supplies, and especially if they were in a rural area, it started to shrink. And being kids, they weren't seen as an essential, they were seen as grubby or extras. And it definitely messed with me watching that movie, especially because I was prepared to see a magical adventure, not reality. But it was a good thing to have documented in a different way so people could step into this world without having to see a real life figure, because then the reality is you go on the Discovery Channel or any news report, you can see this with real life people rather than it being animated. Besides it horrifying you, it was beautifully done, and it set up the devastation of these losses that happened, and just the reality of, like fireflies, a short-lived life full of danger. And now, they are in death. They are in death. Just to give you a moment to think about that, the anti-war animation, the devastation, the loss, the siblings, the family, and just the boatload of other healing and trauma that has occurred in all these other stories, or even the not healing, because that is another devastation in life, that some healing doesn't get a chance to happen, or it's something so unattainable given the other obstacles that the environment, the capitalists, the social factors that are in play compared to one's own need and want and desire to heal. I mean, there's a lot more to talk about in depth on each of these topics, or just in general, how anime, animation, cartoons portray different types of traumas, different types of problems, how different series, depending on its genre, its age group, its subtypes, or the overall plot, is going to discuss certain issues. But overall, each of these series do bring it up in different ways for different types of feeling, overall life goal, or even what is going to drive the plot, because compared to a slice of life anime that's just centered in a few groups of people's lives compared to the state of the whole entire galaxy, the world, feels very different on both the reader's priority and the characters in the game, the story itself. I mean, just remembering After School Nightmare. That was a manga to read. I did not generally know what the heck I was stumbling into besides an aesthetic cover with a story that may talk about intersex, gender identity, gender fluidness, male and female stereotypes, if you can be one or the other, if you can break free from these expectations, if you can move past what has hurt you, if you can save yourself, if you yourself are going to become destructive in your wants and desires, those around you then using you to get a means to an end. How, like, if you've read this, how even the ending occurs that, yes, maybe people did succeed in getting their wish, but then this other world still happened where ugliness and darkness occurred. So now, what now? The world is just good now? That we just forget all the horror and stuff happened? Or that now life is perfect? Or now life can operate without these ugly parts of themselves? But then it takes away all of the tension, all of the buildup of character development and makes their lives not even meant to be cross paths now. And they're simply going about their business without realizing they literally sold their soul to the devil for this new life, and they have no idea. I mean, maybe I should go reread it just to be sure that's how truly the ending was. Because when I read it, I was like, all this for just... And they lived normally. And I do want to mention, of course, besides that initial shock and awe and wonder at how the story proceed, the story's main overall plot does come out both hinted at the start of the story and continuously sprinkled through. Because the whole fact of they have yet to go into the real world, that this is their way of fighting through and being reborn physically in the self that they want to be. I.e., that's why at the end of the story, some people are not existing anymore, and why our main character then magically is no longer intersex. Which is frustrating, to say the least, that the character is forced to pick at the end. They can't just be themselves still. But obviously the big thing, the story is talking about their gender identity, trying to figure out which way he wants to live. And lo and behold, the graduation is them being born, and that now they don't have to pick anymore, and that the decision has been made by their past self. And I mean, it is called After School Nightmare. It's not fully a sweet story. People sacrifice themselves, people manipulate each other, they show the ugly parts of themselves and their wants and needs because they truly think going through this battle, they'll have everything smooth sailing from here. And depending on how you read the story, sure, there is success in the end, but there is a lot that is sacrificed to have that end. And I mean, what is it? This is still a series that's from early 2000s, so who knows? If they've created something else, maybe there's someone else who's taken this idea and revamped it. I've yet to find anything else that's similar in the interpersonal and identity struggles. But again, I have to read through more manga and see something else that holds true to what I experience in this. Because again, some stories you don't see the big underlining story till like maybe the 5th or 6th volume, because there's a lot of other world building, art, design, and characterization they're having to put as the foundation. And I will give it a try. I will venture out some more, because now I have a few more dollars to suffice in buying some chapters. I can't blow my paychecks on 20 volumes of manga anymore. God save us all! I really think that's where we should end this episode. I mean, it has been a long time running since I released the last episode, but I mean, I was trying to do some more editing on this and a bit more backstory on some details I wanted to talk about, and even I'm about to start up grad school and I was trying to do work and just everything got pushed aside. But I mean, I like this podcast business of just chatting and creating a ASMR feel to it, and what I could bring up or discuss or ponder upon. Sure, it's going to go left and right sometimes, because I'm reflecting on a realization that Anime has done a significant amount of healing and calming and resetting and giving me a free range of emotions without it being expected. It just happens. The tears will flow, the laughs will just come out of nowhere, the pondering the questions, the terror, and even enjoying how a story unravels and how the picture is painted across the screen. Everyone has a different adventure in coming into a story. And yeah, it's like the whole fact of how people enjoy TV series, but it's just something different with an anime, especially a long drawn out anime or one that has different topics talked about, different music, different conversations, and how dialogue is presented. And even the uphill challenge to complete it without being spoiled or understanding why others enjoyed the series so much. And now I'm in that secret club of people who understand it. There's many ways I should be describing this, but that's just what's coming to mind first. And I like to talk. Obviously, I may not have everything wrapped up pretty in a bow to conversate on the fly. This may be a good way for me to work on that improv bit by bit. And I like to wonder else what other games, what other stories. Did I even talk about, yeah, we're just gonna throw this out the window, but some video games that I played that physically made me cry, that I could not stop some tears from happening because of the storytelling. To some, maybe it's cheesy, to others, maybe totally expected, but to me, I'm enjoying that there's some games with their lore and details in the background that you can optionally find or are presented at the forefront of the story, such as any Persona, Life Sims, RPG, JRPG, YS, Tokyo Xanadu, Calgary, Effect, just basically that personable journey that you take in a game like Trails of Cold Steel, Trails of the Sky. If you're getting the gist of what I'm talking about, where you're having an adventure and you're operating this main character with a vast amount of other people you get to talk to and explore with and bond with. Basically the whole Tim Rogers experience of talking to these creatures, but both having an epic journey built up both by your stats, your weapons, your collection of healing items, and then realizing every time you go into another part of the story, something else is being unraveled both by you, the reader, the player, and the characters in the game. And once you've reached the final boss level, both the immersion and the experience just collide with each other, and you think about it both and how much effort you've put into this and what you've gained from it, both literature-wise and gameplay-wise. Because, the one that I was just talking about that made me physically cry recently was Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus, because I don't have the Vita, but I had the PlayStation 4 game. And honestly, I was playing this game, having a great time playing as Ko, and having all these characters, you got to see and hear what their stories were. And then coming to the finale of the main part of the story, it devastated me understanding the truth behind of all the bad events that were happening. It hurt me. Maybe it could have been described in a bit more detail, but for what I got the gist of, just life was a lie. Having your entire life not actually real, that there was fabrications going on, it messed with me. And especially for how much time and effort I put in as a character to bond with these characters and have it fractured. just made me both determined to save the day and to at least make amends with what had happened in the game world. Crazy enough, there's more if you have the X Plus, because then there's an after story, an epilogue, which I haven't finished yet, but I'm wondering what else is going on in the background of the darkness. So we'll talk about that next time some more. I don't think we're gonna talk more about video games specifically on the next chapter of this podcast. Ooh, we could talk about D&D because I started it. I have a freaking binder with all these decorated bits of spells and inventory space and a whole journal I'm documenting our adventure on. And it's so fucking fun! Yeah, I think that'll be the next part of our journey. The exploration of D&D, how therapy, how friendships, how bonding, storytelling, improvisation, and a whole fucking lot of math brings together a ragtag group to save the world, all because of rainbow wine. Tune in next time for XP for Heal, and we'll do some more shenanigans. Bye-bye!